Lakes are pretty great. Some you might even call Great Lakes. The North American Great Lakes are what most people think of when they hear that term. Maybe a true lake connoisseur would think of Lake Baikal or the Great Bear Lake. But there's a whole group of lakes that rival these more famous Great Lakes, and are rarely mentioned. Africa's Great Lakes are fascinating and unique in many ways, from their geology and geography, their histories, and their unparalleled biodiversity. The African Great Lakes lie in East Africa, mostly along the larger region of the East African Rift. The splitting tectonic plates here created deep basins and changed the flows of rivers, creating what are now the African Great Lakes. The rift is partially what causes the split in moisture between Central and East Africa, with the tropical Congo rainforest on one side and the arid hills and mountains on the other. The African Great Lakes lie between these two zones and have created extraordinary ecosystems. Lake Superior, the largest North American Great Lake, has around 80 native fish species. Lake Victoria, the largest African Great Lake, has at least 300 species of cichlids alone. Lake Victoria isn't even the most biodiverse African Great Lake, but it is the largest, so it's a good place to start. Lake Victoria is mostly split between Uganda and Tanzania, with Kenya taking a little strip in the northeastern corner. The largest settlement directly on the lake is Uganda's capital, Kampala, and there are smaller cities and towns around the lake. Living along the lake can be both a blessing and a curse. The main problem for people is hippos. These aren't the cute pygmy hippos, these are common hippos, the ones that have been known to capsize whole boats and kill hundreds of people a year. Hippo attacks are unfortunately common in the area, mostly attacking fishing boats, but they have been known to attack people on shore as well. Nile crocodiles also live in the lake and have been known to occasionally attack people. Mammals aren't the main source of variety here, but there are various rodents and monkeys around. You've got the spotted-necked otter, vervet monkeys, swamp antelope, swamp mongooses, swamp shrews, rusty rats, and this cat-looking thing. The Williams mud turtle is only found around this area. Pretty cool turtle. There's a ton of birds, of course. Nothing super unique, but there are a lot. I could scroll this iNaturalist page forever. The true biodiversity is found underwater, mainly in one family of fish, cichlids. Cichlids are just amazing fish. They're what inspired me to make this video. Cichlids are fairly unknown outside of the aquarium trade, and that's a shame. Out of the 30,000 or so fish species in the world, cichlids make up around 3,000 of those, with more being discovered each year. I feel like I'm overusing fascinating and unique, but there's no other way to describe cichlids. They have some of the most striking colors of any freshwater fish, 2 sets of jaws like that thing from Alien, and some raise their babies inside their mouths. This is real, it's called mouth brooding. The main type of cichlids in Lake Victoria are of the Haplochromis genus, which has around 200 fish that have been formally described, and around 100 estimated to be undescribed. Notable Lake Victoria cichlids include the flameback, the Christmas fulu, the rock crebensis, and most importantly for people, the Victoria tilapia. Unfortunately, there's been a sharp decline in the variety of fish species in the lake over the past 100 years or so. Governments in the area wished to increase the fish catch from the lake, and saw many of the native fish, particularly cichlids, as trash fish. This led to one of the most destructive acts for the environment of the lake, the deliberate introduction of the Nile perch. Nile perch are large, hardy fish. They eat just about anything, and thrive in shallow environments like Lake Victoria. They often form into large schools that scare predators away, and work together to get food and control territory. In contrast, cichlids are mostly solitary territorial fish that spend a great amount of time fighting each other. As anyone who has kept pet cichlids can tell you, it's a matter of when, not if, they begin to fight amongst themselves. The idea behind their introduction was that cichlids could be preyed upon by larger Nile perch, effectively converting the calories into one big fish that is easier to catch. Around 90% of the cichlid population in the lake has been wiped out by Nile perch, and efforts to curb this have been unsuccessful. Cichlids are often used as bait, and Nile perch are lucrative for the local fishermen. You can see how this would be bad for the cichlids. Enforcement of regulations around the lake is lax, and about 200 species of cichlids are believed to now be locally extinct. That's pretty sad, but thankfully the Nile perch has not had a meaningful effect on the local invertebrate population. Lake Victoria has a ton of clams, snails, crabs, and precisely one species of shrimp. I'm not sure how anyone can be confident in that, but that is what reports about Lake Victoria invertebrates say. A lot of invertebrates, and freshwater crabs in particular, are threatened with extinction, but thankfully the ones here are doing just fine. At least that's what the IUCN thinks. Invertebrates are increasingly threatened with extinction due to habitat loss, but at least there's one place where they're doing okay. Lake Victoria hasn't been completely spared from ecological problems, though. Water hyacinth is an aquatic plant from South America with a surprisingly long list of uses. One of these uses is in decorating, where it is sometimes called water orchid. Belgian colonists brought the plant with them to Rwanda for use in their gardens, and it slowly worked its way through the region's waterways to begin invading Lake Victoria in the 1980s. Water hyacinth grows super fast. A patch of it can double in size over 2 weeks. It sends out these little stems that can easily grow a new plant. These are practically impossible to stop and get absolutely everywhere, like the plant version of glitter. Water hyacinth causes all sorts of trouble for people and wildlife. It covers large areas of water, starving the other plants and fish below of oxygen and sunlight. Mosquitoes love to nest in areas covered by hyacinth, hampering local anti-malaria efforts. There have even been blackouts in Uganda due to large amounts of hyacinth entering the turbines of hydroelectric plants. The other African Great Lakes haven't avoided it either, and it was spotted in Lake Tanganyika in the late 1990s. Lake Tanganyika is the second deepest and second largest lake by volume in the world. It sits to the southwest of Lake Victoria and is mostly split between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Tanzania. Zambia has a small portion in the south, and Burundi has a chunk in the north. Burundi's largest city and former capital, Bujumbura, sits on the lake. Hippos and Nile crocodiles live here too, but thankfully attacks are rarer than in Lake Victoria. Lake Tanganyika is a popular place to see wild flamingos, and some rare species of guinea fowl also inhabit the area. For landlubbers, there's a few exotic animals: zebras, warthogs, chimps, and monkeys, and a grab bag of other animals. That one is just a plain old cat. Lake Tanganyika has the least number of cichlids of the African Great Lakes, around 200 species, but these are some of the most famous and impressive. Tanganyika cichlids may be low in their number of species, but they have incredible differences from each other, owing to how they evolved in one of the oldest freshwater lakes in the world. Most of these are endemic to the lake, around 95%. Tanganyika cichlids are known in the aquarium trade for being relatively easy to keep as far as cichlids go, and the fish themselves are on the smaller side, so they fit in a wider variety of aquariums. Some of the most popular are shell dwellers, small cichlids that live in discarded shells along the lake bed. They're famous for their wide variety of colors and slight iridescence that is similar to saltwater fish. The largest cichlid also lives here, the creatively named giant cichlid. Giant cichlids can grow up to 3 feet long, and there are rumors of larger specimens out there, but that's unconfirmed. These buck the trend I mentioned earlier about cichlids fighting with each other. Giant cichlids have been known to work in pairs or small groups to hunt other fish, though they will fight if they feel crowded or don't have enough territory of their own. These are somehow kept as aquarium fish occasionally, which is insane considering each fish needs around 30,000 gallons of water. That's like 250,000 pounds of water. I think that would break the floor joists in most homes. These fish are a contrast from the norm of Tanganyikan cichlids, which are known to be small and slow-growing. Fish here are known for using the underwater terrain to their advantage, like the shell dwellers from earlier. Take the fairy or lyre-tail cichlid. These will create caves by moving around small rocks and raise their fry as a community. There's even fish that exploit this behavior, like the cynodontis catfish. It will seek out cichlid nests and lay its own eggs in them. These catfish eggs hatch sooner than cichlid eggs, so the baby catfish will eat the cichlid eggs. They even do it when the cichlids are mouth-brooding their eggs. Look at him, pure evil. Tanganyikan and Victorian wildlife are pretty cool, but they don't compare to the piece de resistance of the African Great Lakes, Lake Malawi, or Lake Nyasa if you want to be different. You know how everyone has that one obscure country they're obsessed with? For me, that country is Malawi. That might have to be a separate video, so for now, we'll stick to the lake. Lake Malawi has by far the most complicated borders of these lakes. The entire western and southern portions of the lake are owned by Malawi, and Mozambique takes a chunk from the central part of the eastern half. This northeastern corner is where it gets troublesome. Tanzania and Malawi disagree on how the British Empire drew the border, so Malawi claims the whole lake to the shore, while Tanzania claims the border is in the middle of the lake. To top it off, Malawi has 2 islands completely surrounded by Mozambican waters. Mozambique is nice enough to let Malawi have them with no fuss. Maybe Tanzania can learn a lesson there. That's right, I support Malawi's claim. You have your own Lake Tanzania, this one's Malawi's. Standard East African fare for mammals here, all the safari ones, rhinos and elephants too. Lake Malawi is known for being a good place for birding, with a lot of endangered or otherwise rare birds gathering here. Lake Malawi has a few fishing birds, like the African fishing eagle and Pell's fishing owl. That owl looks cute, but don't be fooled, it is guilty of child neglect. Lake Malawi has by far the most varieties of cichlids, and probably has the most fish in general of the African Great Lakes. An estimated 850 cichlid species live in the lake, around half of them still being undescribed. One group of cichlids from the lake are the mbuna, that do that same rock-dwelling behavior from earlier. But these are more famous and popular because they're blue. That might sound shallow, but blue is a really uncommon color for freshwater fish. It's usually reserved for saltwater fish, species that have had hundreds of years of selective breeding, or fish that have been genetically modified into Crayola colors. What the hell do you mean a fish is copyrighted? Malawi cichlids have all sorts of uncommon traits like this, due to Lake Malawi's history of evolutionary radiations, essentially sudden explosions of diversity of species, like the Cambrian explosion. It's hard to put together exact timelines for the evolution of different species, but Lake Malawi has potentially had the fastest creation of new species ever. Malawi cichlids can become new species in as little as 20 generations. The taxonomy here is an absolute mess. Besides mbuna cichlids, the other major group is the haps, the same group from Lake Victoria. Or maybe they aren't the same group. Sources seem to disagree on whether haps and haplochromis have been split into two groups or not. It's a rather haphazard classification system. Anyways, mbunas and haps do not like each other. Mbunas are very territorial, and haps like to eat other fish. Haps are very brightly colored and are larger and more aggressive than mbunas. They also do that mouth-brooding thing. There's a few species of haps that even play dead to draw in prey. Generally, they stick close to the shore, but not as close as mbunas do. There's a third, smaller group that occupies the niche left open by haps and mbunas, that being utakas in the open water. Utakas are one of the least studied groups of Malawi fish, partially because they never got popular in the aquarium trade like the other guys. Utakas are more peaceful and will move in schools to feed on algae, plants, and zooplankton. As juveniles, they aren't very colorful. They stay a gray-silver color until adulthood, where they get all sorts of colors. Being open water fish, it would be bad if the juveniles stood out like those LED headlights, of course. Utakas are a so-called waste bin taxon, meaning most cichlids that don't meet the requirements to be either mbuna or hap are shoved here. Except the tilapia. The tilapia get to be their own thing. Same sort of tilapia you can find elsewhere in Africa, but the critically endangered species haven't recovered in Lake Malawi, sadly. Tilapia here have been overfished for a while now, and a few other species have had the same fate. The chambo, the campango, the lidol, and a bunch of others have had their populations reduced by as much as 90% in the last few decades. The sardines are doing okay, but they're mainly used as bait and not eaten directly. Invertebrates are also on the decline here, but that's probably for the best since these tend to carry some nasty diseases. There's a ton of lake flies around Lake Malawi, which can be turned into a cake-like thing. I think I'll stick with pie. The African Great Lakes make up one of the coolest and most unique regions of the planet. While they probably aren't what most people jump to when they hear Great Lake, maybe they should be. They've certainly earned the title. I didn't even talk about all the other smaller lakes in the area. It's unfortunate they're so unknown outside of aquarium hobbyists, even geography nerds don't mention them. But there they are, propping up whole countries with their ecosystems. They're hidden gems, and that's what makes them so special.
You have reached the 651 area code test number in St. Paul, Minnesota for the Minneapolis LATA 628.